Hello everybody, my name is Brooklyn, otherwise known as TheDramaticOtaku, and welcome to my review of the one and only Iron Lung, the 2026 indie horror film created by none other than YouTube's very own Markiplier, and based on the original 2022 indie horror game of the same name. I will be doing a spoiler-free review for the first time ever, as I do think some of the awe and suspense of this film is best experienced going into the film blind. So that is your warning. I will try to make this as spoiler-free as I physically can, and will be telling you my experience watching the film, what my thoughts were, as well as exploring how it holds up as not only a film, but a video game movie, as well as the elephant in the room, Markiplier and his effect on the film, and how I as a fan experienced the film as compared to my partner who does not watch Markiplier but came to watch the movie with me. But to give you a little smidgen of context before jumping right into my review, the stars are extinguishing, the planets are dying, and blood oceans are appearing on moons after the event known as the Quiet Rapture. Our protagonist, a convict in this post-apocalyptic universe, is sent into one of these blood oceans to find the truth about the blood moons and see if there's any hope left for humanity. It's a very rough retelling of the summary of the film, but to begin is my personal opinion on the film itself. I really like this film. Crazy. Who would have thunk? It as a horror film is fantastic. It is technically a sci-fi horror, but there is definitely some minor elements of body horror and psychological horror. I will say I am quite numbed to body horror, so moments my partner pointed out to me as being very significant, I thought more was just very cool in the practical effects side of things from a production standpoint, more so than being like, ooh, yuck, you know? For me, it's the psychological aspect that really kept me engaged in this film the entire time, as I will say it, my mouth was pretty much open, gobsmacked for a good half of this film because I was just that engaged with it that much. I don't think it's wrong to say that the concept of the game, Iron Lung itself, especially in the state it is now, is a fantastic base for horror. The whole draw of the game is that it is suspense-based. You don't know what's going on outside, you know something's going on, and that there is something outside, but you do not know until it is way too late. You'll hear me say it later that this movie plays the game. It builds off of what is already in the game and really brings what is already there to life while creating a universe of its own. The same can be said about the pacing, that it takes what is in the original source material and really builds off of it. For the most part, the game can be quite slow. As I said, it's an atmosphere created with suspense, and the end is quite explosive. The first half of that movie is that slowness. It lays down the rules of the submarine, what to do, what not to do, and absorbing as much information as possible, questioning the importance of every action, every dialogue piece, everything. Then, in the second act, I found myself, as I said, mouth agape the entire time, as revelation after revelation presented itself, hung with moments of suspense, wondering what was out there, what's happening, will there be a happy ending, a constant string of what is currently happening and what will happen next. My partner's opinion of the film is that she believed the movie to be more of a thriller than a horror due to that constant build of suspense, but that's where I more so see it as a psychological horror than a thriller, as the character is fighting with others, himself, and reliving memories that led him there, at points not knowing what's real and what's fake, thus the psychological aspect. Something small I enjoy has something to do with the connection of the setting and the character's deterioration as the movie progresses, as the character deteriorates over time, as does the submarine. I really liked how the set transformed during the film, and I can absolutely see how this movie has the world record for the most fake blood in a movie ever. For the budget they had, I was really impressed with the set pieces that they got. There were moments production-wise where I wasn't massively impressed. Some of the CGI moments, you can sort of tell Mark is on a green screen or on a sound stage, but these moments are very brief as they only actually appear in flashback moments, but they are extremely noticeable. Now, this is an independent production, so I can see why it also had, compared to like Disney, this had an extraordinarily small budget in comparison. So I can see why, especially with the amazing practical effects that went into this film, why maybe some of the more digital elements didn't feel as good to me. This does, however, lead me on to some story gripes that I had. I would have liked to see the main character's backstory realized just a little bit more instead of getting some things more so told to us. I understand as to why they did this, one, to contribute more to the pacing, and two, so it doesn't take you out of the setting of the submarine for too long, adding to that feeling of being trapped. It's just something that I would have liked to see, but I completely understand the reason for not doing it. It's just I felt there could have been more than what they gave us, but again, I can understand the creative reason as to why they didn't. I'm in two minds of it. My main critiques are more so to do with the audio mixing and the lighting of the film. An important element of Iron Lung is this speaker thing, as this is the only way for the protagonist to speak to the outside world. There were some points in time where it was really, really hard to understand what the speaker was saying, especially with some overlapping dialogue. What I really hope is that this is a theatre thing, like there was more speakers tuned to playing like bassy things and were picking up on the bass of the overlapping voices instead of the like higher whispery elements, which made it a little confusing to hear. That has happened to me with films before. I'm just hoping that's the case, and that in the physical and digital release of the film that it is much clearer to understand. Lighting wise, in comparison, I felt for the most part I can forgive because A, of the setting, but B, it is a horror movie. It is not the most abhorrent example of the lighting being too dark and not being able to see anything in horror movies. In cinema in general, I've found a lot of action movies do that as well. It's not the worst. I just wish it was a little bit better. There were some points where I'm just sitting there going, what the fuck am I looking at? Well, I can forgive it because of the genre. There really just were moments where I'm sat there going, what the fuck am I looking at right now? You know? I do have some story moments where I go involving topics of radiation, drinking, and why is it so hot? But I'll keep those opinions to myself for the time being. If you do want me to yap about theories about Iron Lung and the plotline and the story, let me know and I may do so eventually. But yeah, leave a comment, let me know, subscribe while you're there, and let me know if you want to hear my theories about Iron Lung. Now onto something that I felt was really important, given this is not only a movie by a YouTuber, a gaming YouTuber, but based on a fucking video game, which is, as a video game movie, A, is it true to the game, and B, is it a good video game movie, in my humble opinion, as I think the last two movies that I reviewed that were not anime based, I think were video game movies, and I think it was both FNAF. No, I lie, the last one was SpongeBob. The two before it, I think, was FNAF and the Super Mario Bros. Movie. So, the movie does something that I have looked for in the last few video game movies I have watched, which is it plays the game. And it doesn't do it as like this referential nod, such as in the FNAF movie. No, it actually just plays the game. The first 10, maximum 20 minutes is to me the experience of the game as played by the player. You get an idea of the mechanics and game rule of the world you are in. You can't see anything, but you have to guide yourself with some buttons and levers and a camera. You don't know what's out there, but you need to discover what there is. After that, after all that's been established, almost like a tutorial of the game in the beginning, the actual movie sort of runs its course and starts to play. The story of the protagonist plays out. There is a climax, a resolution, like a conventional movie, but that very first 20 minutes sets up like the basic mechanics of the game. Now, I know you're shouting at me that that's kind of what you have to do in the beginning of a movie as well. Set out the stakes, set out what this person needs to do, but the way it was done just felt very game tutorial to me. I really appreciated it. I actually really liked. There was a point where I'm sat there being like, I'm just watching Markiplier play the fucking game, which I'll get into. Which this whole playing the game thing is what I really like to see in movies, specifically video game movies. I'm real tired of seeing video game movies of like this plot that's just not the lore of the games. I'm one of those people who wants to sort of see the game be brought to life with the lore of the game. I'm the kind of person who will sit there and watch the cutscenes and be like, oh my god, movie. That's the kind of person I am with games. The film not only takes from the game, it uses the game to make its own storyline for the character, instead of what, say, the FNAF movie does, or the Mario movie does, which is creates just its own separate universe based off of the pre-existing IP. I feel like Iron Lung runs parallel to the game, whereas the FNAF movie sort of is taking all these different turns that I don't really expect, and the Mario movie is a cash grab. It's why I enjoyed in my FNAF 2 review, in which Mike actually plays FNAF 2. To me, Iron Lung doesn't exactly create its own universe, but extend the pre-existing one, while adding in another layer of the main character, in which in the game would be us. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it makes sense to me. Instead of us, what is being replaced is a person with a proper backstory and life within universe that actually contributes to the events in the film. Of course, it is not the exact same universe with the exact same lore of the game, but it is an effective enough adaptation where that personally just does not matter to me, and there are points where I'm just sitting here going, I feel like I'm playing the game. Which leads me into the Markiplier aspect of this film. So, something that I felt was really important to actually talk about when it came to this movie is that this is Markiplier's self-funded project, and I, being a fan of Markiplier for well over a decade at this point, does have a different perception of the movie than my partner who does not. So what is the effect of the story for me seeing Markiplier as the main character versus my partner who doesn't watch Markiplier but obviously recognizes him as this super famous YouTuber? For the first 20 to 30 minutes of this film, I could not unsee and unhear Markiplier yelling at the game. I could not unsee the YouTuber playing the game, whether it had to do with my familiarity with his specific Let's Play of Iron Lung, or simply because I could not disassociate Markiplier, the YouTuber that I've been watching for 12ish years, with Mark, the guy that's acting on screen. Or if it's because the last feature I actually remember with Mark playing an actual role was in space with Markiplier. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was really hard to do for the first portion of the film, and in part I think it's because the movie plays the game, like I mentioned. Without spoiling too much, the reason I'm so dead set on this plays the game aspect of the film is because the first 10-ish minutes, as I said, feels like a tutorial of the game almost. Here's the mechanics, here's some basic lore, now onto the real game. As the Iron Lung is dropped into the Blood Ocean, and then after finding something, it's raised out of the Blood Ocean and put back in with a new objective. That whole first part feels like a tutorial, and I couldn't unsee Mark playing the game from his very first run, which I did go back and watch after the movie, and I really just couldn't unshake that feeling. After that first 10 to 30 minutes of the film, as the actual suspense built in the film, I found myself being able to no longer see Markiplier, but rather the character he was playing. I would say this happened around 30 to 40 minutes in, but it took a while for me to actually get into that headspace. I kept finding myself getting sucked into the plot, and something would happen, and I mentally went, that is a great moment. That is a great performance. Well done. Like, based on Mark's prior acting role, being in different web series he did, and based on his career as a YouTuber, I wasn't expecting it. Not that I didn't expect a dramatic performance or that it was the most earth-shatteringly amazing performance. It was just better than what I had previously known from this person to act like in the past. It's effective. It was great. And as I got more into the film, the more effective it was. But it really wasn't until that, again, 30 minutes in, that I could just stop seeing Markiplier doing a great performance and could instead actually just see the character. The thing that actually sold me on the convict as a character was his gestures, seeing really what made his brain tick, how he would physically point in the direction he needed to go. Small things like that, which actually does tell you a lot about how someone thinks and what kind of person they are. Little things like that being put into the character is really what drew me in. In comparison, my partner, who does not watch Markiplier, did not have this issue. But still felt that the performance was very good from Mark. The way she described it was as imagining seeing your friend acting in a stage play and they're doing really well. You'd think like, oh, they're really good at acting. That's what her sort of opinion was on his performance, where she could recognize it was a really good performance, but that fame recognition thing was still sort of in front of her for a while. In essence, what I'm trying to say is that yes, you can disassociate Markiplier from the main character. If you're a longtime fan, it can take a lot longer than if you're not. But I believe Mark's performance in this is really effective to draw you into believing that this is a completely different person. I'm sure on second viewing, I'd be able to make this disassociation much faster, but Mark's performance in this is fantastic. I'm not saying that as a fan, I'm saying this as someone who was really invested into the movie. Something I found interesting about the movie was that there were elements that felt really familiar. I did mention before that I went and rewatched Mark's Iron Lung gameplay, which I would actually recommend, because on rewatching, some questions appeared that ended up being explored and answered in the movie itself, which I found really cool. There was a lot of thought put into this movie, as you can tell, and there was a lot of thought put into this movie, and just seeing Mark's first reactions to the game itself and seeing how some of that was translated into the movie, I find really interesting. So I would recommend watching his actual gameplay as well. Now, for the last few movie reviews where I've actually gone into cinemas and watched it, I usually document what the crowd response was to the film when I went, but for the amount of people that were in that cinema, it was quite minimal. And that's not to say that it was like a bad crowd response. It compared to me seeing the FNAF movie, SpongeBob, the Minecraft movie, it was minimal. And that is probably because everyone there was actually really excited to see this film. and it's not a meme movie that kids can go to, unlike the last few movies that I had gone to. But everyone there was genuinely really excited for it. And while the cinema wasn't packed, there was a good amount of people that were sitting there, more than I'd seen for movies like Chainsaw Man or even FNAF 2. But being fair, there were only originally 9 showings at my local cinema, and when I left the movie, there were a lot more people there waiting to see the next screening of it. And that made me so incredibly happy to see. So, for my final opinions, personally, Iron Lung, for the budget that it had, for it being indie, and for being a video game adaptation, really surprised me with how good it was. It stayed true to not only the plot of the game and its mechanics, but the core element of suspense, really adding to the pre-existing story rather than making its own separate universe off in the distance like certain other video game movies. The performance from Markiplier was surprisingly very good and engaging as compared to the overzealous, hyperactive and campy performances we'd seen in Mark's previous works. And overall, I found myself genuinely really enjoying this film as a film instead of a product from one of my favourite YouTubers. And that, I think, is really important. That I believe this movie could very well stand on its own without Markiplier's name being attached to it, though that is a really big reason as to why so many people went out to go see it. Are there ways this movie could be improved? Absolutely. There are aspects that left me wanting more, or wanting a remake of this film with a higher budget and more resources to really finesse the project. I felt there could be more done with the backstory of the protagonist, some polishing on certain scenes to be done, but that's not to say I disliked this movie one bit. I give Iron Lung a low 8 out of 10 or a high 7 out of 10. I was really impressed with this movie. There is more that could be done to really finesse it, but anything lower than an 8 to me feels like a crime, and I can't wait to see what new projects Mark will have in the future. I really hope it's some more theatrical ones like Iron Lung, but only time will tell. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this movie review. What movie would you like me to review next? I have a certain book that's recently added to my shelves that I do need to review next. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, so if you could please add to that cause, I'd really appreciate it. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.